So whether it be a janitor, a secretary, or some type of paraprofessional or whatever it is, they're making poverty wages. And frankly with you, I don't know why they even keep the job, but most of them love it. And we have neglected these folks, and I say we have neglected these folks for the past few years, and that's what we wanted to try to do. You can see there, for the hourly and 11-month salaries, we wanted to give them a 6%, and the 12-month salary scale was 3%. Any comments?
We'll just let you go ahead and finish, and then we'll take comments after you are completed.
Where do you want to go now? Is that it? Okay. If you look on page 10, you'll see the projected operating revenue. And for 15, it's 28,000, 16 to 28,000, and goes right on down the line there. You can see what it adds up to in the federal, county, federal grants, food services. And for the 15-16 year, it would be an increase of 4% overall. And if you look at the last page, page 11, you'll see the projected operating expenditure. Instruction, it's an increase of 4%. Administration, attendance and health is 6%. Transportation is 8%. Operations and maintenance is 7%. Facilities is 6%. Technology is 4%. Federal grants is 0%. And food service is 0%, giving us operating expenditure of increase of $1,703,552, or 4%. Questions?
And I'm sure board members have questions. Just a couple of before they start. Have you received any state figures as far as, do you know what you're going to be receiving as far as finance is concerned from the state?
We've received the proposed House proposal and the Senate, but those are not finalized numbers at this point. And the Senate was, we were still trying to work through all that. We haven't gotten the details and the breakdown, is that correct? But we have begun to see, because they have proposed that there was going to be some possible increases for salaries.
Okay, do you have any idea as to when you're going to know that? And the reason I'm asking is it's pretty difficult to look at a budget realistically if you don't know what all the facts are. And so that the state's numbers play a major role as well. So.
No, I agree with you, but it's just hard for us too, Mr. Taylor, because we're just guessing at figures, ballpark figures. If we go too high, if we don't get it, we're in trouble. And you know, it's a guessing game until the state comes out and says this is what you're going to get.
Okay. And I just have one more question, and I'll let other board members answer this. I know a percentage of your increase obviously is in salaries.
Right.
What percent are you, and maybe you said this, but what the percent of increase that you are asking for your degreed persons versus your paraprofessionals and so on?
It's 6% for the support staff, 3% for the administration, and the teacher scale is sort of, you know, it's not. It's trying to fix the situation. So there's percentages to give a percentage overall the increased budget. I don't have that number on me right now, but you
can see on that last page of the expenditures that the construction line, if we get the money and apply it as intended, would be a 4% increase. Okay. So that is the salary increase plus the related benefits and costs associated with an employee. So that's, that's the cost really of moving people up a step and implementing this new scale, which would be a really nice thing to accomplish, because the scale we're operating under now, if you look at the differences between steps, it just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So we're trying to establish something that will serve us well in years to come. It's pretty predictable. Employees can look at it, and it's fair.
Okay. What is your projected ADM?
Right now, we're projecting that, again, we'll be at 4,200. That does not include our pre-K students.
Okay. All right. Other board members, Mr. Thomas?
Dr. Kelo, I just asked Mr. Fincham to give you a document that is in your handwriting that you gave the board, and that listed the amount of money or the county's local contribution.
Right.
And I'm not sure if it's the change in the finance staff or what, but those numbers, which are in your hand, don't match the numbers that we have here in our presentation. And I was just wondering if there's some issue or... No, what I have was from one of our 2-on-2 meetings previously. Dr. Kelo passed out information that said what the local contribution was, and I happened to save that, and it didn't match the numbers we have on the county transfer here now.
The only number that doesn't match is the 11,340, the 11 million versus the 11,216,270. I know where we pulled that, because we had done a reduction.
Could you grab that back for me, please?
There may have been an increase in some, I remember that there was about a $300,000 cut, but Mr. Thomas, I'd have to go back and check that. But the 12,342,281, all those matched. The 11 million matched. The years may be different because it depends on whether you call it a physical year or the other year. The only number I saw that was different was the one for 2011 or 10, which was 11 million, and we have on this one 11,216,270.
Okay, well, 08 and 09, I mean, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to make sure we get the right information. I just want to share. I'll share with the board and I'll share with everybody else. We just want to have the same information.
Right.
And if it's because of changing finance director or whatever and the year shift, but they really didn't add up to me. But that's okay. I just want to make sure we get the right information. And I do want to tell you that we said before it was a process to try to get the teachers to where you were. I appreciate you taking a step now. I appreciate the school board trying to take a step and not bite off the whole thing. And I'm going to try to support that. So I do appreciate it. We'll double check. I'll make sure you get a copy of what you handed out for us before.
Right.
And I'll share with the rest of the board.
Right, and I'll check that number because I think we'll get that one accurate.
Thank you.
Mr. Black?
Yeah, I guess I just have a statement. I think you understand that schools are obviously a big priority for us in the county, and you guys have come a long way. My only concern, I'll be honest with you, is we did do an 11-cent tax increase last year, and that was obviously, but the voters put it on to improve the schools. And looking at this, we did give you 1% in 12, and then 3% last year, plus the 5.5% to cover the VRS. I guess it was the VRS contribution. I'm not sure what has been in the last 4 years. What has been our contribution to the Caroline County employees, non-school related?
Salaries you're talking about?
Yeah, percentage. Have we
3% for 13, July 1, 13.
And we did the 5.5% as well, right, to cover
Yes,
the.
but that was the year before. But yes, we covered the VRS.
Did we do the 1% in 12 as well?
No, we did I thought we did 6% when we did the VRS. So we got
Okay.
1%.
It's 5.5 of the schools, I think, here, but I've got an email, so.
And that could be. We did
Right.
6, which
Okay.
pretty much we had factored in would keep most people from having to pay more taxes, not 100%. And then we did 3% July 1 of 13. There was no increase July 1 of 14. And that was the only increase that I know of that goes back to the beginning of the recession.
But when we gave the 5.5% of that was in benefits, the increased cost.
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
You know, some people paid more taxes and were negative,
Okay.
but most people, it covered their tax hit for going up in salary 5%.
Yeah, same thing that we experienced. And
Okay.
most of that funding came through the state.
So, I mean, I guess please understand from our perspective, I mean, I do see where you guys are coming from in certain areas, like, for example, the transfer amount that we have here, if that's accurate. I'm not sure if that's accurate. What Mr. Thomas has is accurate. But it has, you know, we're basically the same from 2008 through 2015, I mean, as far as the same number. So, I mean, I do know it is going to be a process. It's not going to be something we're going to be able to fix overnight. And we have to see, we haven't gotten our numbers in yet either. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Mr. Underwood?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. As Mr. Black said, looking at the 1.7, that is a 7-cent tax increase, which is almost not going to happen. So I think looking at the budget, I looked at, you know, you had a $265,000 for technology, which I don't think we can afford to go backwards with technology, which I would have a conversation about that one-time expense for technology, which would not be reoccurring, something we could consider for schools to keep us going in the right direction in terms of technology that would not impact the taxpayer. In terms of, I would ask that the board would consider looking. So I'm looking at ways to give you some of the things that you're asking without having impact on the taxpayer. Maybe difficult, honestly, very, very difficult. I don't think anybody can, we just can't, I can't do a 7-cent tax increase. And that's not hearing from the other departments. But what I do think, again, as I said, I think there's some one-time costs that maybe can offset some of that number that you're asking for. Hope we can kind of have that discussion later on. But I know you're in dire straits. Thank you.
Well, you know, we got, excuse me, we got to go back and cut our budget. You can look at the 3 big items that are going to be hit first, and all of them are either salaries or additional staff. Because if we cut the others, like you were saying there, we can't cut that technology down. In fact, we should build it back up some. But those 3 big items are going to take a hit, a big hit.
Okay. Mr. Akers?
George, you and I have had a conversation about this. I've indicated to you that I'm going to support and will support funding for the salary scale adjustment, and certainly we want to see that our support staff gets an increase as well. As everybody has said that I think has spoken so far, $1.7 million is, and we talked about that as well. That is just probably not going to happen at this point in time. But I do believe that we can, and I hope this board will agree to at least start the process that we can get the teacher salary scale corrected, if you will, and put it in order that it needs to be, plus give our employees. I would hope that the county administrator will put a salary increase into the budget this year for county employees because they're deserving of it, just as your people are deserving of it as well. So, you know, I've had that conversation. I'm not telling you anything new. You know what my feelings are, and that's where I'll go.
Mr. Seeley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the instructional materials and the technology, I still see there's going to be tremendous savings in the fuel budget this year for the school system. I mean, diesel's down at least $1 a gallon. We've got 90 buses. They fill up twice a week, 45 gallons a week. that's $100 a week times 90 buses times, call it whatever, however many weeks you want, but it's still going to be over $100,000. I would like to see the school system bring us that savings and let us reallocate that back so that you can invest that into technology, into an instructional material fund, or any other one-time expenses. But I think, from my perspective, I mean, you've heard the tax increase, but I'd like to see some savings come back that we can give back to the school system so that we can build some confidence that we're working together, because the zero-sum balance that keeps coming back hasn't really engendered any sort of real confidence. The other thing is there's going to be a tremendous savings when you take the high school and the middle school to natural gas. And that's going to cut your fuel by at least a third in actual cost. I'd like to see at least some of those numbers be factored into your budget, because that renovation should take place this summer. That HVAC and roof should be some of the first things we do, so that the savings that you see is immediate, and that should also be pretty tremendous. I'd like to see that as a discussion item with us as well at a work session. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I basically asked the questions that I have. I think that at this point, we need to set up, I'm sorry.
I've got one more question, maybe it's
Okay.
for the finance. I guess I'm still not, maybe I can meet with you we can go over this, because I'm not a finance guy, but I still don't understand, and you hear it all the time. I mean, I know they do it in Spotsylvania, they do it in other localities. They do incentives at the top of the scale, where incentives to the top teachers for retirement, and then, you go and you hire the teachers at the bottom end of the scale, the new teachers, and that's big cost savings I mean, Spotsylvania is doing it on a cycle every couple of years for budget purposes. And I still don't understand why or how that even if I have 10 employees or I have 100 employees, it wouldn't save the school system money. So I'm not sure if there's something we can sit down and say, hey, look, I'm still baffled by that, why that hasn't been offered in Caroline yet. And
Well, one of the reasons is we only have like, what, seven or eight teachers that would even fit in close to that category, not like Spotsylvania.
And I think it's a fair request. I think we can sit there and try to see what it could do. It depends on what you do as the package and all that deal, but I think we can have a discussion on that.
We can, but Mr. Spalding is right. When in coming up with the dollar value to put on the shift to the new salary scale, you got to know what the population is, the population distribution is along the steps. When I looked at it, and I don't know that it's unique to Caroline. It may be pretty close to average. I haven't studied that, but it shocked me to see how few teachers we have that are at step 15 or above. It's got to be 70% of our teachers.
Yeah.
Could be more than that. Just the vast majority of our teachers, 15 years and below of service, and after that, they're all gone.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, you may not have the numbers, but how many total teachers do you have? I mean,
322.
You have 322.
Budget is based
Yeah.
on. Yeah, but there just aren't a lot beyond step 15.
And right now, what is the difference between, just out of curiosity, I mean, I haven't looked in, but what is the difference between the highest teacher in Caroline County? I'm a 30-year teacher with a master's. Salary-wise compared to the beginning. I mean, what's the difference between your top and your bottom?
Oh, it's right on the scale.
Yeah.
Your current.
Current one is
Yeah.
38, that's the 38 to 65?
27.7.
Say that again?
27.7, that's a round number. I know he'll call me on, I'm not accurate on.
So you're talking the difference between 38,000 and 65,000, basically.
correct.
27,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's over 30 years, that's less than $1,000 per year average increase.
But what I'm saying is, I guess my theory, I guess where I'm coming from is, even if I have 10, even if I only have 10.
You don't have 10. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. All right, I'm just saying that would be $270,000.
I think your proposal is good, and we really can sit down Mr. Black,
Okay.
if you want to.
I would be-
I think
I
it's
would-
worth looking into.
Right, okay, thank you.
I think at this point, oh, Mr. Thomas?
Could I ask one? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the school board participate? I can't remember the name of the state program, but there was a program where we gave years of teaching based on business experience. Do we do that?
I don't know, I'm not
We have-
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, are you talking about when we hire somebody?
Yeah.
We actually cap out our scale, teacher scale, at 10 years. So when they come in, if they have more experience than that, if they come in at 15, they still go to step 10.
So kind of, I was kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Black said. If you're hiring a new person who's been, say, a scientist at Goddard for 20 years and he wants to be a teacher now, that person would get 10 years of credit and come into the scale?
How about that? No.
No?
I mean, we're talking about apples and oranges here now. A teacher that comes in that we desperately need or has all that, we can negotiate with them on that. I mean,
Okay.
you see what I'm saying?
But I thought it was a state program that the state said to do something. Okay. But you negotiate, so
If
the lady that's a scientist at Goddard, she comes to the county and says, I got 20 years as a scientist, I'm going to teach science for you. You would negotiate
She'd most
where
likely on
she'd
step
fit in the
10.
scale.
Yeah.
Okay,
step 10.
okay. All right, thank you.
I can ask. Dr. Kilo, just, can you talk about class size just a little bit? Where we are in terms of average class size? And
It's all over, it depends
Just-
on the subject.
absolutely, special ed, I know it's going to be,
When we're looking at the elementary, we're probably running some classes 25 to 30. It depends on the state class size reduction numbers,
Right.
K-3. You know that we have a standard set, and that depends on the school and their free and reduced lunch rate. So those we have to meet the state mandates there. When we get into 4th and 5th grade, the numbers are jumping 25 to 32. Middle school, again, in the core classes, we'll have classes ranging anywhere from 22 to 32 or 35. High school, it depends on the schedule and what they're running and looking at that semester, and so it can flex the demand. But again, we meet, when we look at our overall English numbers, which we have requirements that we have to meet, we're right at the limit at those state requirements. If they have a 21 per student class size, we're probably sitting at 20.89.
Okay, well, and again, as we've said, we certainly want to do the best we can to try and support the requests coming from the schools. I hear over and over again that we really want to look at the salaries and see what we can do as far as providing funding necessary to maybe take care of salary increases, since that might be something that will help to get you where you want to be as far as at least that portion of your budget is concerned. Hopefully, when you get your numbers from the state, the governor has repeatedly said over and over again how he wants to work with education and how he wants to provide funding for education. We haven't seen those numbers yet. Hopefully, he will be true to his word, and you will see some increases at the state level, which will help along with what we're doing at the local level. I don't know about the feds. I don't know where we're going to end up there. But at any rate, what we at this point need to do is look at our budget, and we're in the budget process, and we will be certainly doing some work sessions, and we can sit down and maybe address some of the issues that we've talked about tonight in a work session and come up with something that's going to keep our school system moving forward and certainly not destroy our citizens as far as the tax base is concerned. Again, we want to do everything we can to support the schools, and we just want to find a way to do it where it does not detrimentally hurt the citizens of this county.
And I want to thank you all as a board for your support and your care. And as the state comes out, just as a reminder, and Mr. Cully, you may be aware of this, when they do, and we talked about it, they do a lot of unfunded
Dr. Kilo, could you move the mic over a little?
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I just want to thank you all for all the support and the concern in helping to support the growth of the public education and us increasing it and making it better and stronger. But as you know, when the state comes out and if they say at 2%, some of those positions, that doesn't fund every position we have, and it only funds those, because we keep talking about they have mandates that are unfunded, and you guys face the same thing. We all do, and just as a reminder, so if they say 2%, that doesn't mean they knocked out 2% across the board. And we will work with you, Mr. Taylor, on those numbers.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Yes, sir.
As far as the budget and where the House and the Senate proposed budget just came out Sunday, so it's pretty fresh. The House was pretty concise, pretty informative. If they got their way, if they were to vote today, we'd get a little bit more money. The governor's hope, what he has said publicly, is that he hopes he can spare K through 12 education any cuts, because they're going to be cutting some money coming up. So those are two, leave us alone, that's okay. Give us a little more money, that's okay. The Senate, I couldn't read really well. As far as the 5.5% quote-unquote raise, I just, I've heard a lot about this. I was in school finance when the legislature made us do that. It cost real money to do that. I'm not saying it didn't. It cost a lot of money to do that. The teachers' standard of living did not change one dime. They essentially became a conduit for Caroline County to give the money to the teachers so that we could take it out and send it to Richmond. And I'm sure Mr. Cully will agree with me. Their pay may have gone from $44,000 to $45,500. They didn't see a dime of it. Okay? That was not, it was real dollars. It did not enhance the employee's standard of living, and my personal opinion, it was just taken from the taxpayers of every municipal and county government in the Commonwealth to start making up for sins of the past. So 5.5% as a soundbite sounds like it was a really nice thing. It was taken at shotgun and given to the state. So it's true what it was, and it really cost you guys money. I agree.
Thank you very much, sir. I would just add that the same thing happened at the county level with the county employees. Some of them actually end up in a higher tax bracket. So I understand where you're coming from. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the next agenda item, presentation of the 2014 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Michael Garber. Good afternoon, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board and management. Thank you for giving me just a few minutes of your time here this evening. Before I begin, though, I would like to introduce Betsy Hedrick. Betsy is a partner with our firm as well. Actually spends a lot more time here with the audit when we're doing that process and working with our audit team. And as of this year is co-leader of our government niche team. And so any of those difficult questions you have, I'm just going to turn and ask her to answer all of those. And we are 7.5 months into the next fiscal year, so I'm going to do this at a very high level. I think getting down into the weeds at this point and dollars and things of that nature is probably not necessary. You should have received 3 different documents ahead of time, the financial statements themselves. There was another document that's addressed to the board with today's date on it, as well as a separate management letter that just is on our letterhead. The financial statements, there's obviously some pages in there that you draw your attention to quickly. The opinions that we provide 3 different opinions within that document. The first opinion is on the financial statements themselves. There's different levels of that opinion. The highest level that we're allowed to give, which is considered a clean opinion, is called the unmodified opinion. And the county did receive that for this document. So that is the best opinion that you can receive. In the back portion of there, that document is a compliance section. There are 2 opinions there. One of those opinions is on the federal awards that you receive. We look at several of the programs, the schools, the social services, that the county receive federal dollars. That opinion is also an unmodified or a clean opinion. And then the third opinion that's in that section, or the second opinion in that section, our third opinion overall has to do with internal control and compliance on other types of areas that we look at when we're here. Certainly the internal controls over financial reporting and things of that nature. There was one minor compliance finding that we pointed out in that section, as well as one material weakness that we mentioned in that opinion as well. I'm very confident that the material weakness itself was a one-and-done type situation. We had a note payable that had not been recorded by the county that needed to go into those financial statements for the first time. And just based on the fact that it was a little over $700,000, automatically puts us into a material weakness for financial reporting. The compliance finding was minor and I think was addressed very quickly, and I don't expect to have to see that finding again this year. As you do start your budget process, the only other thing I'll mention in that document, or continue your budget process, I should say, the statistical section does give a lot of information there. It's a 10-year history of revenue sources, expenditure sources, transfers to the component unit school board, things of that nature, our debt per capita. There's some wonderful information in there. School enrollment, that was a question earlier. You have that 10-year history in that statistical section. So just something to keep in the back of your mind if you're trying to get some trends and things of that nature, as you're looking at the budgets that you're trying to look at for next year. It may be an area where you can gather a little bit of data yourselves and do that. The other documents talked about just the audit process itself, some of the rules, the guidelines, the things that we follow as auditors in the report that is addressed to you with today's date. It also talks about if we had any other problems or issues in performing our audit. We didn't. If we did, we would have those spelled out in there as well. Talks a little bit about some of the entries when we came in to do our audit. If we have some significant journal entries that need to be made to the financial statements, we've listed those there as well. And of course, we all know in some of these documents and financials, there are estimates that need to be made. I wish every number was a hard and fast number. Cash is easy to tie down. Receivables are easy to tie down. But when it comes to things like an allowance for uncollectible accounts, that's an estimate. Landfill obligations and post-closure costs that we're going to have for 30 plus years, certainly an estimate. So those significant estimates are spelled out in that document for you to see as well. The last item is just our management letter. It has some additional items that we thought were important to point out to the board and management to consider. Maybe some different things and controls that we think would be important to think about, not necessarily have to do, but could certainly enhance and add to some of the significant controls we already have. And then, of course, in that document, it also talks about some of the things that are up and coming, the new GASB pronouncements, how they may affect the county, with some of the new pension numbers and GASBs that we're going to start pulling on, all these wonderful VRS liabilities that we were just talking about and how they're going to get pulled into the financial statements of the county. That is discussed in that document as well. That's all I really have prepared to say this evening. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, okay, I'll start on this here this time. Mr. Seeley, do you have questions regarding the audit?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't quite get to finish this I'm hoping that in the future we'll have an opportunity maybe for you all to come back and talk about the audit process and what transpires in that once again, because I think that would be beneficial.
We'd be happy to
all of us.
And we'll actually, I don't want to scare Fran sitting over here, but we'll be back in a few months to start this year's audit, and we're here for a full week at least, and we can let you know when we're going to hear. Maybe we can set up some time then to sit down that week and talk about this year's audit and the process and everything that we're going to go through.
I think that would be tremendously helpful.
We'd be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Mr. Akers?
I have no questions.
Mr. Underwood?
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Black?
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Thomas?
Just one, you mentioned in your report that there were several checks in the treasurer's office that were uncashed. Is that normal? That was in the management review.
I don't think uncashed is correct. You're talking about the unclaimed property? Oh, I'm sorry, the checks that we had written that others have not cashed.
I believe that's what it was.
Okay, yes. Yeah, the state code requires any checks that are outstanding that the county has written to vendors or even employees, things of that nature. If they have not cashed those checks, the first thing they have to do is try to track them down. If they are unsuccessful in tracking down those individuals and issuing another check, then that amount of money has to be remitted to the state through the Unclaimed Property Act.
Okay, and that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
Unclaimed property. So there's a time period if the checks the county writes are not cashed in a certain time, then
1 year.
Then we can declare those unclaimed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but we have to still encumber those funds.
That's correct. You have already encumbered them. You've already spent them. They could be from last year's budget.
But I mean, if I write you a check now for $1,000 from the county, you don't cash it for a year, our accounting system encumbers those funds. But if you never cash the check, I have $1,000 extra.
And we've already reduced it when you wrote me the original check out of our cash account. So we're just trading $1,000 check for another. So it doesn't affect cash. It doesn't affect current year expenditures or anything of that nature.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned you reviewed the county's debt, the debt numbers the county has.
Yes, sir.
Anything unusual there? We're out of line with the rest of the world, or we're fairly normal with the rest of the world, or rest of the counties in Virginia?
In the statistical section, there is a table, and I'm going to take you to the page really quickly because I know you have other things to do. Let me find it. Let's look on page 126. It's table 11. The right-hand column shows your net bonded debt per capita for the last 10 years. There's several items on this page maybe we should look at besides just that one column. And of course, this net bonded debt only includes general obligation debt. It doesn't include notes payable, capital leases, things of that nature. So it's just general obligation debt. If you look from 10 years ago in 2005 to 2014, we went from $988 to just a hair over $3,000 net debt per capita. That is not, it's not a high number. There are lots of localities that are in the $4,500, $5,000 range. It's not a low number. I think there are several counties as well that hover around the $1,000 to $1,500 per capita number. And to maintain where they need to be, they have debt plans in place to pay back a certain amount quickly so they can issue new debt and continue with capital projects. So in the realm of things, I don't think you're out of whack. I don't think you're too high. Certainly not the lowest. But I think it's also important when you look at that number, not just to look at that one, but look at the third column from the left where it says assessed value. In that same time period, our assessed value that we're assessing taxes on to help cover this has more than doubled as well. So it maybe hasn't gone up threefold, but it certainly has doubled. So it's not just hitting the same people harder to cover that net debt per capita.
Right.
We've got an increase in value of our real estate as well to go with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and when you come back, we will certainly look forward to maybe sitting down and talking about more specifics.
Great. We're happy to do so. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to our 2015 second quarter budget report. Brian?
I like yimping around. Good evening, Chairman Taylor, and members of the board and county staff. In your packet is the second quarter budget status report for the 6 months ending December 31st. This second quarter report is shown on an accrual basis for all funds. You're not going to see a cash basis document anymore. I'm training you all to accrual. Before I leave here, you all understand accrual. As you can see in the attached summaries, 43.8% of your budgeted revenues from major funds have been billed or collected, and 43.4% of budget expenditures have been expended. Your percentage of revenue is slightly higher, and your percentage of expenditure is slightly lower than the same period last fiscal year. $21.4 million of general fund revenue has been collected in the first half of the year. This is $2.7 million more than what was actually collected last year. Your property tax collections are higher for the first half compared to 14, and it's based on the percentage of the budget as well as dollars. So it's up. Local sales tax appears to be increasing, which is a good sign. Your collections for your local communication taxes continues to still be slightly lower, which is a trend that's been going on for almost 5 years, and I don't see it going to stop anytime soon. We have to rely on what the state gives us, and that's it. Your business license revenue is up due to several construction projects started during this time. Your recordation tax collections are up, but keep in mind this will be reduced before the end of the fiscal year as part of the reduction to the state aid to the localities. It's one of the items that's going to be hit for that. So far for the first half of the year, only permits and fees and recoveries and rebates are down. Everything else seems to be up, which is a good sign. Your overall expenditures are slightly below 50% threshold, as are most departments. The few that are above that, it's due to timing issues, maintenance contracts, those type of things. It is noted in here that not all the transfers have been done or recorded, so there is a slight skew in these reports based on that. All the departments continue to be conservative in their spending. Your school revenues and expenditures are under the 50% threshold, as are social services and CSA. Your social services revenues and expenditures are slightly lower than they were for the same period last year, but I think part of that's probably going to be a timing issue. Your revenues and expenditures are slightly higher than last fiscal year. Your debt retirement fund reflects revenues of 58.5% and expenditures of 60.5% due to the timing of your debt service. Your utility fund revenues reflect 6 months of billing, and we're at 54.8% of budget. Your availability fee revenue is at 63.3% of budget. Through the 6 months, 11 water and 10 water sewer applications have been applied for. 15 water and 17 sewer applications have been paid, plus one large commercial. Your operating expenses are 39.7% of budget, well below the 50% threshold. Your operating revenues in the utility fund continue to be higher than your operating expenses, currently at $522,000 higher than what your expenditures are running. Your debt service payments for the utility fund are 67.3% of the budget. Tourism fund reflects 44% of budgeted revenues and 45% of expenditures. For the first time in a very long time, the transient occupancy taxes are actually slightly higher than what they've been in years previous for the same time period. Most revenue sources for the major funds, except debt retirement, appear to be steady or increasing slightly. Your property tax collections are being closely monitored, and collection processes have been stepped up significantly. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions from board members, Mr. Seeley?
Yeah, I have one, Mr. Taylor. So we've had 17 water and sewer connections,
Paid, yes, sir.
and that's at 16.5. And then we had 2 additional water connections.
We've had 11 water and 10 sewer applications applied for. We've actually had 15 water and 17 sewer applications